Hey folks, I want to tell you a story that is chronicled in the fourth chapter of the physician Luke's first book, and that is the Gospel of Jesus according to Luke. And as we enter into this particular episode in the life of Jesus, we need to understand this is very early in his ministry, and yet, even this early, Jesus has already developed a reputation that precedes him. He's a charismatic guy. He's a traveling rabbi now. He's done some amazing things, okay? Healed people, performed miracles. His teaching is just astounding. It makes sense. He connects with people, and so they love him, and he has crowds that follow him. So anyway, he's been on a retreat in the mountains for a few days, well, about 40 days, where he was able to beat the devil in his temptations. And then he decides to come back to Nazareth, his hometown, and spend some time there. Now, you need to know that Nazareth is a Jewish town. The only Gentiles that are present there, from what we know from archaeological evidence and documents from that time, the only Gentiles, that is non-Jews, that are present there are clients of the construction shops located in town. As far as we know, there are no resident Gentiles. It's a thoroughly Jewish town. And these town folk, along with most every other practicing Jew across Israel and Judah, have been waiting a long time for the prophesied Messiah to show up and restore the kingdom of Israel. They have been waiting a long time, since the Davidic kingdom, since David was king. They've been waiting for the restoration of Israel as a nation among nations. They've been having a hard time for quite a while, and they've been waiting. Now, when I say they've been waiting a long time, you got to understand, David was right around 1000 BC, okay, the Davidic kingdom. And then, as the kingdom went downhill, prophets came on the scene that prophesied that there would be a new Jewish Messiah who would restore the kingdom of Israel. And so the Nazarenes, the Jews there, as well as all other practicing Jews, had been waiting a long, long time for this coming Jewish Messiah. In fact, it's been 400 years since the very last prophet was on the scene. And so you got to know that they're weary of waiting. They're just weary of waiting. And now Jesus comes back into town. And the crowds begin to follow him because he heads toward the synagogue. And he gets to the synagogue and he goes in there. And a crowd gathers there in the synagogue. And Jesus, as the traveling rabbi, assumes the role of teacher now and asks for a scroll. Particularly, he asks for the book of Isaiah from our Old Testament. And he opens it up and he begins to read. He reads, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free and proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And then he rolled the scroll back up, gave it to the attendant, and looked at the crowd there and said, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." Oh, you got to know these folks got excited, folks. You got to know that. They already knew Jesus was a smash hit as a miracle-working rabbi. They had heard all about the wonderful things he had done down in Capernaum with all those Gentiles down there. And now, today's the day. He's announced that he's the Messiah. The Messiah is here. He's a hometown boy. Oh, they've been waiting a long, long time for this. Well, I can almost see the grimace on Jesus' face as he looked at the excitement and enthusiasm of the crowd. He says, look, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Jesus, all the things you've done in Capernaum, do all that here. Okay, Jesus? Now, that's what they were saying. Luke records that. What is not recorded by Luke is what they were thinking. But Jesus knew what they were thinking because he said, I know what you're going to say to me. You're going to say, physician, heal yourself. And what that means is you did a great job with those patients down there in Capernaum. Now do a better job with us as your patients. We're Jews, they're not. We deserve even more and better treatment. Well, Jesus did a lot of wonderful things for the Gentiles, who the Nazarenes thought didn't deserve it. You gotta wonder what these folks were imagining he would do for them, Jews who deserved the special blessings that come from the Jewish Messiah. They've been waiting a long time, and they feel like they deserve it. That's key. They feel like they deserve it more than the non-Jews. Well, then Jesus ticks him off. He puts them in a rage. Luke says that. And he puts them in a rage because he tells them two stories. And the first story is about Elijah. The story is that Elijah was caught in the middle of a severe life-threatening drought. Didn't have any food, didn't have any water. God said, go to the town of Zarephath and ask for water and bread from the widow to whom I will lead you. So he goes to Zarephath, finds the woman, but it turns out that she only had one loaf of bread left. That's all she had. That's it. But she shared it with Elijah. And because she was willing to share it with Elijah, she was duly rewarded with a miraculous increase in both meal and oil in order that she could make more bread. Not only that, her son died, presumably from hunger from the drought. And Elijah prayed over the son successfully for his restoration. It's a great story. There's only one problem as far as the Nazarenes were concerned. The widow was a Gentile, was not a Jew. Jesus tells a story about ministering to a Gentile. Then he launches into a second story about the prophet Elisha. Elisha was sent to minister to the lepers that were in the land. Apparently there was a contagion of leprosy taking place, and he was sent to minister to them, and he did. But only one of those lepers was healed, a fellow named Naaman. Naaman was a Syrian army commander, and you guessed it, a Gentile, a non-Jew. The point that Jesus was making in telling these stories to the Nazarenes was quite clear. And that is, the Jews' relationship with God was not an exclusive franchise. You hear that? The Jews' relationship with God was not an exclusive franchise. Well, the enraged Jews grabbed Jesus. It's amazing how quickly the mood turned. They grabbed him and they dragged him out of the synagogue to the edge of the steep ravine. They were so mad they were going to push him into the ravine, presumably to stone him. Why? Well, we've already said it. Number one, they've waited for the Messiah and his salvation in a long time. They deserve it. They deserve it more than the Gentiles. And number three, if they can't have it, then neither should the Jews. If Jesus isn't going to give it to them, they're going to make sure that Jesus doesn't give it to the Gentiles. Well, probably wondering what happened to Jesus. Luke's very short in this. He simply says that Jesus passed through the midst of them and went on their way. Interestingly, you know where he heads? Back to Capernaum. Now, there's a lot of good stuff in this story we need to attend to, but two things really impact me, and the first is this. I think Luke nails it. He illustrates perfectly what human self-centered behavior is. I've waited for it, I deserve it, and if I can't have it, neither can you. And the second thing that impacts me is that Jesus continues even today to pass through the entire crowd of humanity with no exclusions, offering free, undeserving grace to whoever will receive it. Whoever. No exclusions. And this self-centered behavior isn't just about big sensational stories like this, and this is a sensational story. It's about frequent and common, ordinary episodes of daily life. Let me tell you a quick story about when I was a kid. When I was a kid in elementary school, I had three good friends, Doug Wiggins, Daryl Broadveld, and Kenyon Webb, that I hung out with. We were mischievous kids. We got in trouble some, but I was a better kid than the other three. I just got to tell you that. I was a better kid than the rest of them. I wanted a buzz bike. If you don't know what a buzz bike is, that's what we called it where I grew up. A buzz bike appeared late 60s, early 70s. It was a bicycle that had the high handlebars and the banana seat. I don't know why we called them buzz bikes, but that's what we called them. For months, I waited for my birthday in May when I was sure I was going to get my buzz bike. I had left way too many hints not to get it. Well, May 20th finally rolled around, my birthday. I got up. I was so excited about it, but I didn't get my buzz bike. I had waited for it. I deserved it. I was a better kid than my friends, and they all had buzz bikes and had them for a while. So that night in bed, I decided if I couldn't ride a buzz bike, neither should they. So I got up early that next Saturday morning. I got a monkey wrench and I walked to Doug's house, Doug Wiggins' house, up East High Street, about 2.5 blocks. Got up there and went to the back of the house where he kept his bicycle. No one was stirring, and so I felt pretty safe about it. I let the air out of the tires. I took the pedals and the kickstands off and threw them behind some shrubs. And then I snuck back home. Later that morning, while my brothers and I were doing our chores outside, I saw Doug walking down the sidewalk, walking his bike down to the downtown, headed for the gas station in order to put air in his tires. He had found the pedals and the kickstand behind the shrubs, and he put them back on. And I had a strange feeling watching him walk by. I know now that what I was feeling was shame. I was ashamed. And I carried that shame with me on and off. It kept coming back. I carried it with me through the rest of that spring and summer and fall and into the winter. Interestingly, I got a buzz bike for Christmas that year. And while I was excited about getting a buzz bike, I had another feeling. And I didn't know what it was then, but I know now. It was the feeling of the burden of guilt. I felt guilty. I was excited about my bike, so I decided I would go up to Doug's and show it off. And I got up there, and sometimes guilt gets a hold of you and makes you do the right thing, and I didn't plan to do it, but I told Doug, though, it's me that sabotaged his bike the last spring. He got a smile on his face, kind of chuckled. He said, I know it was you. And I know why you did it. And Patterson, don't worry about it. It's okay. And what he did was offer grace to somebody who didn't deserve it. Saving grace. He saved our friendship. Saving grace. Now, that's just one little story from my childhood, but my goodness, folks, we have all been down that road. Someone else got the job you deserve. Someone else got the raise that should have been yours. Someone else has better health than you to take care of themselves like you did. Someone else got the spouse who acts like you want your spouse to act but doesn't. You went to the grocery store. The lady in front of you had a full grocery cart just packed full of stuff, and you were only getting a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk, and you thought that she should let you go first. Somebody in the church says the preacher likes her better than me, and I'm a better person. Why does he like her better than me? I deserve to be liked. And somebody might say I was promised heavenly blessings on earth. But my life's been nothing but hell. I deserve better. And the list of self-centered behavior goes on and on and on. We're all self-centered. And it's hard work to try and not be self-centered. We all have good reasons, or should I say excuses, for being self-centered. And yet, with all that selfishness, still, even today, Jesus passes through the crowd of humanity and offers each one of us free, undeserved, saving grace to whoever will receive it. That's the story, the long and the short of it. We'll see you next time.